Good afternoon, or good evening, better said. Hi. I'm Suzanne Del Gizzo. I'm professor of English and chair for the Center for Integrated Humanities. And I want to welcome you to this special event, the 2023 induction ceremony of our Honors Society in the Center. That includes Phi Sigma Iota, the Honor Society for World Language and Literature, Lambda Pi Eta, the Honor Society for Media and Communication, Sigma Tau Delta, the Honor Society for English Literature, and Theta Alpha Kappa, the Honor Society for Religious Studies. It is always a great pleasure to attend this ceremony, which gives the community, and especially our faculty, an opportunity to celebrate the work of our amazing students. It's also lovely to see family and friends here to celebrate their work as well. So, our plan for the evening is really simple. After this welcome, we will introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Patrick McCauley. We will then induct new Honor Society members into their respective societies, and then we will have a brief celebration. So, I am pleased now to welcome Jason Fisher. He is an English and secondary education major, and he's going to introduce tonight's speaker. Jason?
Patrick McCauley received a PhD in philosophical theology and literature from the University of Iowa in conjunction with the University of Glasgow and its Center for the Study of Literature, Theology, and the Arts. He received a master's in English literature from Binghamton and a BS in cinema production from Ithaca College. He teaches religion and philosophy. He is married and has 2 high school-age sons. He came to Chestnut Hill in 2008. He is currently training for the half Ironman triathlon with hopes for a full down the road. He is active in Chestnut Hill's IDHP program, serving as both a faculty member and its interim director. His last book was titled Into the Pensieve, The Philosophy and Mythology of Harry Potter, and he is nearing the finish of another that will address the philosophy and theology surrounding experiences that transcend our own understanding. Please welcome Patrick McCauley.
Okay, as I walk up here, I want you to see that there are only this many pages. You can count them as they go by. I'm always nervous when I see somebody else giving a speech. Like, how many pages do you have? I love ceremonies like this one. I love the recognitions and acknowledgments that are at the center of graduations and convocations. I love these events because I really enjoy looking just a bit below the surface. So many of the students honored here have had the kind of challenges that can put careers at risk. So many have had crazy jobs with irrational supervisors and family issues that can press the demands of college to the brink. So many here have stared at the symbol of graduation, perhaps at 2:30 a.m., seeking the light of inspiration and a refusal to quit. Finish lines can be anticlimactic because they rarely give appropriate voice to the doubt, panic, and anxiety of the journey that precedes them. My own graduate advisor, Dr. David Clem, had a masterful understanding of the power of symbol and its relation to the determination of individual courage. He knew, as few do, that without a symbol that draws forth unforeseen courage and determination from within, there is no hope. So I would like to take the opportunity to look into symbol in order to try to understand how these symbols work. Let's start with an old hymn, Amazing Grace. I once was lost and now am found, was blind and now I see. These lines, written by John Newton, a former slave merchant, describe a curiosity. The speaker here comes to discover that he was lost only upon being found, admits to former blindness only after becoming sighted. It is my own blindness, my own lostness that is invisible to me before I receive the grace that saves, at least if John Newton is to be believed. The curiosity described here is that the blind and the lost have no idea they are blind and lost. If John Newton were to come and tell me that divine grace could cure my blindness, I might look right at him and say, hey man, I'm not blind. Why bring me solutions to problems I do not have? I am a professor of religious studies. At the center of many of the world's religions is the idea of awakening. Something hidden becomes apparent, something unconsidered becomes plain. This is almost always articulated as an overwhelming personal transition, and its immensity is often symbolized by a death and rebirth. The people who go through this transition find themselves so utterly changed that they lose touch, so to speak, with their former identity. It is very common for such characters to receive a new name in sacred literature. Abram becomes Abraham, Siddhartha becomes the Buddha, Mary and Joseph's son becomes the Christ, Prince Arjuna becomes a Naga, the sinless one, the mercenary Saul meets a risen Christ on the road to Damascus and comes away from the encounter as Paul. Jacob wrestles with an angel or his brother and emerges as Israel. This transition, or perhaps conversion, is often seen as the central point or goal of these faiths, these wisdom traditions. But what exactly is implied in these traditions? What is the soul of conversion? What actually is supposed to happen? In what way does amazing grace allow the blind to see? Well, Keiji Nishitani, a Japanese theologian and student of Heidegger, spent a good deal of time discussing this invisible blindness, this disease for which I seek no cure. In the tradition of Kierkegaard, Nishitani asked the questions of the ground of meaning. For most of us, the answer to this question often happens at the semi-conscious level of foregone conclusions and unquestioned assumptions, often habitually derived from inherited evolutionary imperatives, cultural determinations, or some mud-colored mixture of both. At the center of these foregone conclusions is an unreflective presumption of myself as protagonist. I am the character at the center of my own story. Even if I play the role of sidekick in the real world, I prioritize that sidekick position in the story by narrating things through the perspective of that role and personae. To get a better look at this strange phenomenon, we can take a quick look at the word I. I am thinking about going to the movies. I am so hungry that I could eat a horse. I am becoming a bit concerned that I have left my honors ceremony speech to the last minute. The word appropriately belongs to anyone who uses it. It is simultaneously universal in that anyone can use it, and particular in that when I use it, I mean only me. It is, in a certain sense, paradoxical along these lines. It belongs to everyone and also only to me. Authors use the first-person narration and its frequent use of the word I to blur the identity boundaries between the reader, who is I, and the protagonist narrator, who is I. Readers almost always begin to root for the character with whom they share this pronoun. We all, therefore, see the world, that is, witness reality, through the perspective and conditions of the protagonist. The world is always a world that happens to or for me. I always see everything I see through my own eyes, ears, and fingers. This inescapable posture, however, seems inevitably to produce a tendency towards self-orientation, which can, especially when paired with evolutionary imperatives and cultural determinations, produce self-concern, self-prioritization, a will to power. In its early stages, this can be called a form of innocence, the kind of innocence that some see in the Garden of Eden. Nishitani suggests that this produces an understandable tendency to see the world as for me. In other words, we come to the world as young people with an overwhelming tendency to interpret the world by means of a self-prioritized evaluative criteria. Or, to put this another way, we almost always come to the world interpreting the world as a what's in it for me kind of world. I come upon my experience of the world always through the inevitable lens of my own hunger, my own desires, my own worries. I may be sitting on a bench looking at the Wissahickon, but my experience of it will always come framed within my own bodily or emotional concerns. I can admit, for example, that the creek is beautiful, but I may also feel cold, or tired or lonely as I look upon it. The world that I see always comes with the me that sees. The world is merely the context or setting of my story. No one decides this. It is subjectively original. We all come this way. Nishitani then argues that an unexpected question has to emerge from within the existing subject. It is a question that cannot emerge when the individual interprets the value of the world through the lens or criterion of self-prioritization. The Buddhists sometimes call this accidental self-prioritization the illusion of ego. When the individual self functions as the criterion by which the value of the whole world is interpreted, the one thing that does not undergo evaluative questioning is the self itself. The only question that can upset that particular apple cart is the question of the value of that very self. Nishitani therefore argues that the religious journey is and can only be initiated by the questioning of that unquestioned self. Instead of assuming the world exists for me, I begin to ask what I exist for. Instead of asking what is in it for me, I begin to ask what my particular life should be for. This will lead many to consider the archetype of the self-sacrificer. If self-concern is a mistake, the illusion, then perhaps the prioritization of the other, the dear neighbor, might be the solution. Take the following, for example, Matthew 28, 1-5. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb, and suddenly there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord, descending from heaven, came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. For at least 2,000 years, we have reclined into a perhaps idolatrous lionization of the self-sacrificer. We have no shortage of examples of those who are willing to throw themselves into danger to save or to rescue. The landscape is littered with stone memorials to these heroes and heroines. I do not seek here to diminish the majesty of their contribution. However, it seems a little too easy to let this go without some reflection." In her X Factor, Lauryn Hill pushes back on her soon-to-be ex-lover, saying, die for me, you said you'd die for me. Live for me, why can't you live for me? It takes a lot of work to live for someone. Michael Frayn's brilliant play Copenhagen ends as follows. Margareta says, "And when all our eyes are closed, when even the ghosts have gone, what will be left of our beloved world, our ruined and dishonored and beloved world?" To this, Heisenberg says, "But in the meanwhile, in this most precious meanwhile, there it is, the trees in Fallid Park, our children and our children's children." Frayn's Heisenberg refuses to let Margareta's honest acknowledgement of inevitable individual oblivion and in consequence to mar his ability to stand testimony to the crucial, the pivotal importance of this most precious meanwhile. Time is funny in books. Shakespeare of the sonnets lets us know that there is something of the eternal in writing. In a novel, we can turn the page and all of a sudden it is spring. However, we must be careful when we play lightly with the fictional manipulations of time, for we ourselves are fixed within it. We ourselves are held fast within that precious meanwhile. According to my Hebrew Bible professor, there are two things that rise to the top of the priority list in the Old Testament: human life and justice, with justice eking out the top spot. Every effort must be given to preserve life unless morality or justice is on the line. We always sit in an aesthetic distance when we sit with our fictional characters. Can we be sure what it means when people die in books? Have we become too ready to allow the heroic self-sacrifice in these beloved books? Have we allowed this trope to blur our authentic regard for the significance of this most precious meanwhile? Have we come to so regard and expect the character who is willing to die for me, that we have forgotten to look for the characters who have the courage to live for me? So what we have here is a dialectic, a riddle. It seems a mistake to prioritize my own ego self over the concerns of others, but it can also seem problematic to sacrifice myself to the needs of others. In both cases, the fundamental significance of a human life seems to have been diminished or disregarded. We have gathered here today to acknowledge in part the ending of one chapter and the beginning of another. We are here to acknowledge your achievements in the face of serious challenges. However, such ceremonies always imply the question of what's next. Most will defer to one or the other of these poles. However, Nishitani did not imply that self-sacrifice was a solution to self-centeredness. Nishitani did not call for a heroism of self-sacrifice. He suggested that we will come to ask ourselves questions of our own purpose, our own contribution. He seems to be suggesting that we will find ourselves called to a unique life of relevance, and that this question is the solution to the emptiness and immaturity of self-centeredness. Nishitani seems to be suggesting that the real quest is a search for a serious, lifelong contribution. We do not have an infinite life. We have a precious meanwhile, this crucially important but limited amount of time. We each have the prerogative to pour our precious but limited time into whatever we think is worth it. So the question is, what is worth a precious human life? Your precious human life. Do we have the courage to make our contribution, our sacrifice, play out over 50, 60, 70, perhaps 80 years? This, it seems, is the question that Nishitani thinks can break the blindness of self-centered, empty egoism. The irony, of course, is that our willingness to pour our lives, hook, line, and sinker, into a cause worthy of such a thing, an entire human life, we may find the life we most deeply desire, a life of meaning and purpose, quite by surprise. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I'm thinking about that precious meanwhile, both in terms of the time we get to pause today to celebrate our students and this special time before graduation as well. I'm looking at some people who I know are preparing to graduate, and it's this suspended, beautiful moment between two worlds for you. So enjoy every second, every day. And now down to the business of the day. I have forgotten to advance some slides, so let me do that. Okay, so the first honor society that is going to induct its members is Lambda Pi Eta. I welcome Dr. Nora Madison to the podium.
Welcome everyone to Lambda Pi Eta, the Phi Delta chapter of our induction ceremony today. Lambda Pi Eta is the National Honor Society in Communication and was founded in 1985 to recognize outstanding students in the study of communication. Today, there are over 600 chapters of Lambda Pi Eta nationwide. Lambda Pi Eta is represented by Greek letters symbolizing what Aristotle described in his book, Rhetoric, as the three modes of persuasion. Lambda for logos, meaning logic, pi for pathos, relating to emotion, and eta for ethos, as characterized credibility and ethics. To be eligible for membership, students must have declared an interest in the field of communication and have achieved a high level of academic excellence. Students must have a grade point average of at least 3.25 in their courses and a GPA of at least 3.0 overall and be in the upper 35% of their graduating class. I now invite Sarah Walker, current president of Lambda Pi Eta, up to the podium to help distribute certificates to new members. When I call your name, please stand, come up to receive your certificate, and wait by the table until all have come. Roxanne Awanyan could not be with us today. Barry Huntsberger. Danielle Mason. Naya Roundtree. It is my pleasure to welcome our newest members. I will read the oath of membership, and then you'll affirm your induction by saying, "I do." As newly inducted members of Lambda Pi Eta, do you accept the challenge to maintain the high academic and leadership standards set forth by the organization and to serve as examples for the achievement of excellence in the field of communication? And do you promise to work toward the achievement of the goals as set down by the national policies and procedures of Lambda Pi Eta? Please. I now present to you the newly inducted members of the Phi Delta chapter of Lambda Pi Eta. Thank you. And I now invite Sister Mary Helen Kashuba to induct the new members of Phi Sigma Iota.
Good afternoon and welcome. Phi Sigma Iota is an international honor society that recognizes outstanding accomplishment in the study or teaching of the academic fields related to world language, literature, or culture. Members are required to major, minor, or have a concentration in one of the above fields. They must also have a minimum overall GPA of B with a B+ in their language courses and have completed at least one course on the 200 level or above. They must also rank in the top 35% of their class and be at least on junior level. I would now invite Carlota Garcia, a member of Phi Sigma Iota, to come forward. Carlota. And Carlota will, first of all, light our candle, which signifies the association of Phi Sigma Iota. And we'll invite the French candidates, Jacqueline Koval and Nelly Haag. Oh, not yet. Whoa, not yet. We have a little piece to read. You know what languages are like. We talk a lot. From the Middle Ages to the 21st century, French and Francophone writers and philosophers, such as Pascal, Molière, Victor Hugo, Simone de Beauvoir, Senghor, and Mariama Ba, have expressed the beautiful, told stories, sparked revolutions, redefined identities, questioned the unquestionable, defied authorities, made audiences laugh, uncovered social injustices, and dreamed of a new, just, and peaceful world. French is also one of the official languages of the United Nations and the Olympics. About 300 million people in the world speak this important language. And now we would like to present the certificates to our French candidates who have excelled in the study of this wonderful language. Carlotta will give you your certificate, membership card, key, and you get an extra medal this year because this is the centenary of Phi Sigma Iota. Congratulations. Please remain here. I now invite Dr. Inez Mula Garrido to address the Spanish candidates.
Yes. Yes, I do. I am now pleased to welcome our new members, Nila Haag, already here, Julia Rees, and Aubrey Schifano. You are now among the speakers of Spanish, a language with more than 420 million speakers worldwide, and after English and Mandarin, the third most commonly used language in the internet. You are also among the readers of the second most studied language in the world, after English. The study of Spanish offers you direct access to the works of thinkers, mystics, poets, and fiction writers such as Miguel de Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, Renaissance mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, Nobel laureates like Juan Ramón Jiménez, Pablo Neruda, Octavio Paz, and Gabriel García Márquez. Spanish is the language used in movies of countries whose film industries have been internationally recognized with prestigious awards. It is also the language in which some of the most beautiful songs have been written. Songs and rhythms that speak of the mysterious ways that allow diverse races and cultures from faraway parts of the world to find each other, unite, and evolve. We now invite you to receive your certificate, membership card, and key. Congratulations. Enhorabuena. I now invite Sister Mary Helen Kashuba to induct the new members to Phi Sigma Iota.
No, up here. Up here. Remain up here. Up here. You have to be up here. They're very anxious to leave. I don't know what's going on here. All right. You have to promise to observe the regulations of the Honor Society. Since you wish to become members of Phi Sigma Iota, I will acquaint you with our beliefs and the obligations that we assume with membership. And you say we do after I ask each question. Do you believe that peace among nations depends upon our appreciation of the ideals and culture of other countries? Do you agree that the study of world languages contributes to understanding among nations? Do you promise to foster the study of the languages, literatures, and cultures of our international community? In the name of Mu Beta 250 chapter, I welcome you into Phi Sigma Iota. Congratulations. Now you may sit down. I now invite Dr. Suzanne Del Guizo to induct new members to Sigma Tau Delta.
Sorry. That's okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. That pronoun confusion reminded me of Dr. Macaulay's speech with the I and the other and the boundary lines between us. We and I do, and find purpose in it. So good evening again. As a faculty advisor to Alpha Psi Beta, which is the chestnut, the slide, whoops, sorry, I got overexcited with my pronoun point. Sorry about that. So Alpha Psi Beta, the Chestnut Hill chapter of Sigma Tau Delta, which is the International English Honor Society. I am pleased to welcome you to this, our chapter's 16th induction ceremony. Sigma Tau Delta is one of the largest association of college honor societies with over 600 active chapters. The Society's central purpose is to confer distinction upon students of English language and literature in undergraduate, graduate, and professional studies. In order to be eligible for induction, students must be English or English and writing majors or minors, achieve a 3.0 GPA in the major or the minor, and rank in the top 35% of their class. I am now very pleased to welcome our new members, and when I call your name, will you please come up to receive your certificate and pin? And I'm going to begin with a student who can't be here today because she has a lacrosse match, but I wanted to acknowledge her, Molly Killian, so we'll give her a round of applause. And then I got to take this on the road so I can hand out things. Okay, and so Jason Fisher. There you go. Can you stay up here? Thanks. And Julia Reese. Here you go. And I'll shake your hand. Yeah, too many things to balance. And Natalie Leahy. Hey there, super congratulations. Okay. Inductees, you will now take the Sigma Tau Delta Oath of Membership. So please say, I do, after I read this oath. I shall endeavor to advance the study of literature, to encourage worthwhile reading, to promote thoughtful written expression, and to foster a spirit of fellowship among students specializing in English language and literature, ever keeping in mind our international motto, sincerity, truth, design. Okay, please welcome me in welcoming our new inductees. And I am now pleased to invite Dr. Stephen Martin to the podium to induct new members for Theta Alpha Kappa.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm chairperson of the Department of Religious Studies and Philosophy and campus coordinator of our local chapter of Theta Alpha Kappa, Alpha Nu chapter, which is a National Honor Society for Religious Studies and Theology. We have 3 minors in our department, Department of Philosophy, Department of Religious Studies, and a combined minor. For the combined minor, there's a much more breadth of classes you could take. But for religious studies, you have to take 6 religious studies courses. So I really appreciate when someone can do that. So it's my honor today to welcome to the induction of Ashley Burley. Theta Alpha Kappa was founded in 1976 at Manhattan College in the Bronx for the purpose of honoring particularly excellent undergraduate students in the fields of theological and or religious studies through encouraging, recognizing, and maintaining excellence within the academic profession as a whole in these studies and undergraduate and other graduate programs. Our local chapter is also responsible for nurturing excellence in these studies and honoring those who excel in them, as we are doing today. Induction to Theta Alpha Kappa requires nomination by a local chapter, and students must have a 3.5 GPA, that's pretty good, in religious studies and/or theology, and a 3.0 GPA overall. So when I call your name, please come up to receive your certificate, Ashley Burley. I just figured everybody knew Ashley. We don't have to say her last name. So if you could come up, please. Okay, so if you could say, I do, after this short oath, okay? I'm sorry about this tie. I accept membership in Sigma Nu and Theta Alpha Kappa and pledge to continue to foster insightful and generous religious understanding. I do. All right, great. Just 1 second before we applause. She also gets an honor cord from the society. I'm not asking her to wear it now, but she can wear it on her gown when she graduates. So, and that's it.
I'm hoping that's not it. There's one more page. Okay, so thank you again for taking time to be here with us this evening. Before we invite you to celebrate with us with some refreshments, I just want to thank housekeeping, catering, facilities, the AV staff, and everybody who helps make this experience possible. If you are on campus today, you will know this room has been set up and reset up several times. So there is a quiet heroism behind the scenes here. So let's give them, they're not here, but let's acknowledge them. And I also want to thank all the advisors of the societies for all their hard work organizing this event. And I want to thank our speaker, Patrick McCauley, one more time. And, Steve and Sister Mary Helen and Dr. Nora Madison are chairs of their respective departments, but I'm not chair of English, so I would like to take a moment to thank the chair of English, Dr. Barbara Longquist. And so, at this point, inductees, enjoy your evening with your family and your friends, and please join us for some light refreshments in the back of the room. Thank you so much.